Hello, my little yarnivores. Fiber Spider back again. So now we left off in our last video finishing this triangle here. So we're going to rotate our piece counterclockwise, and we're going to start our next triangle right over here. Okay? So starting again with our gray colored yarn. Well, at least gray for me. Very interested to see what you guys are doing, as always. All right, so we have our center stitch, our center hole space here. So third to the right, we insert our hook and we pull up our yarn. And then we do a chain one and slip stitch, a chain one and a single crochet stitch into that first stitch, pardon me. Okay, and then into that center space we do our two clusters separated by two chains. All right, so that's one cluster, chain two, and we'll do our second cluster. Oop. There we go. And then we chain one. And then we skip to the third stitch. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So into this last one of this cluster here, we do a slip stitch to connect. And then we are going to chain two, and then skip over to the third. Chain space always counts as 1, 2, 3. So into the middle, double crochet. We do a single crochet, and then we turn our work. I have a lot more to turn now. All right. And then we finish up this cluster with 2 double crochets into the space down here. There we go. Chain 1, and then 2 sets of clusters, well, a set of 2 clusters separated by 2 chains in this corner here. There we are. Chain 2, and then another cluster, like so. There we go. And then into this space down here, we do our final cluster of this row. There we go. And we chain 1, skip over to the third. So that's, again, the middle double crochet stitch of this cluster. So that's a slip stitch, and then we chain 2, and then we skip over to the third again. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So that's the first stitch of this cluster over here. We do a single crochet, and then we turn our work again. All right. 2 more double crochets down into that space. There we go. And then do our clusters along the side till we reach the top. And then we're at the top. So it's 2 clusters separated by our chain 2. There we go, chain 2. And then we just continue right along. There we go. Chain 1, and then our final cluster into the space down in here. Okay, and then to finish this row, chain 1, and then we need to find the next stitch, so that's 1, 2, and 3, so it's the first of this cluster over here. We do a slip stitch. There we are. And then we need one more row of this color, so it's another chain 2, go into the third, 1, 2, and 3, so it's the chain stitch that we are going to work into. It's always a little tricky, but there we go. So that's a single crochet stitch right in there. All right. And then we turn our work. And then into this space here, we finish off the cluster with 2 more double crochets. Chain 1. Do our clusters as usual up the side till we reach the top. And we've reached the top. So we have our 1 cluster, chain 2, do our second cluster, there we go, chain 1, and then do our clusters down the opposite side. Oops. Come on, work with me here. Almost done. All right, last cluster into the space down in here. There we go. Chain 1, and then into the third stitch once more, which is going to be, of course, again, the chain stitch. We do our slip stitch. like so. And then we cut our yarn and we flip back to the front, and then we'll start our second color. All right. All right, so getting right into it. We go into the third stitch once again. So we were in the chain stitch the last time, so that's 1, 2, and 3. So it's the third double. And then we pull up our yarn like so. Chain 1 and single crochet into that first stitch. There we go. And then we make sure that the gray is a little bit taut, and into that space down there we do our first cluster. There we are. Chain 1 and work our way up the side of the gray. It's funny, last night I did the first segment of part 3, and then when I woke up today, I saw that one of you had left a comment saying, you know, where's the next part? I can't find it. And I was like, I'm sorry, but, you know, I haven't posted it yet. See, the last time when I did part 2, I did the entire length of footage in one go, and I wanted to post it as just one long video, which would have been 2 hours. And I was having a problem with my video editor, so I broke it up, all that footage, into 5 parts. And I thought, you know what? I really wanted to post something last night, so I said, you know what, I'm just going to post that first segment of part 3 as it is. And I'm back again. So, yeah, we're in the corner. And I'm going to finish up by doing our second cluster because we're in the corner. There we go. So, of course, I would love to do as much as I can in the way of videos, although sleep does get in the way. And seeing as how that last part was nearly an hour, I knew that it would take me quite some time to get through the rest of part 3. So, figure I'm gonna do my best to do it, but probably just do it piecemeal. And I hope that's alright with all you guys, because I'm doing the best I can. And as I always say, you can't go wrong as long as you do the best you can with what you have and who you are. And I try. So for the last cluster of this row, I'm going to go into this space down in here. There we are. And there we go. So that is the end of the first round of this color, so we need to do a chain 1, find the third stitch, so that is the last double of this cluster, so that's a slip stitch, and then we chain 2, find the next third, so that would be 1, 2, and 3, the middle. There we go. And we do a single crochet. Turn the work. And finish the double with 2 more sorry, finish the cluster with 2 more double crochets. There we go. Chain 1. And continue on with our clusters all the way up the side here. Come on. Here we go. All right, chain 1. And we're almost to the top once more. Oh. There we are. Okay, chain 2, and then finish the corner with another cluster. There we are. And then work our way back down. So that's a chain 1, another cluster. Oops. Go. Last night I watched a really good movie, by the way. I believe it was called The Girl with All the Gifts. And I had heard about it, and I thought, I'll give it a try. Right now at the time of filming, it is available on Amazon Prime, which, no, I'm not sponsored, but I do have the service, and I rather like it. Yeah, so The Girl with All the Gifts. And it's sort of a zombie-type movie. And it's very reminiscent of 28 Days Later, but it had a bit more depth in the biological and moral aspect of the genre, which I thought was interesting. So yeah, it had some more depth. Alright, so into this space down here, we do our last cluster of this row. But I must say, if you are squeamish, I wouldn't recommend it. Personally, that stuff doesn't bother me. Alright, so we're going to find the third stitch once more. 1, 2, and 3. The middle stitch there with a slip stitch. Chain 2. Find the third again. 1, 2, and 3. So that would be the first double. We do a single crochet. Then we turn our work. All right. And then we finish off this cluster with 2 more doubles. There we are. Chain 1. And work our way across. always loved horror movies, dramatic thrillers. Not a tremendous fan of romantic comedies and that sort of thing. I suppose it helps if you're in a relationship, to watch romantic comedies. Otherwise, you end up watching them with a pint of Haagen-Dazs and a box of tissues. I'll pass. Alright, so we've reached the corner. There we go. Chain 2. And we do our next cluster into that same space. There we are. And then we work our way down the side. And this is going to be the last row using the white. And as I stated in the last segment, because we're only doing 3 rows of the white, it's going to be slightly different than when we do an even number of rows. So the tail end is going to be in the front, but that's okay. We can push it towards the back. It's not a big deal. And I'll show you what I mean later. Okay, we're almost there. Just a bit more. There we are. So it's the last cluster goes into this space down in here. Chain 1, and then find the third. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So that's the first double of that cluster. We do a slip stitch, and then we cut our yarn and begin anew. Be right back. Alright, so I had cut my yarn and we had finished right here. So we need to continue by flipping our work, just as we did with the last part. Alright, and then I'm going to start in with our purple yarn once more. And so we need to go over to the third stitch once again. So we were into this one, so that's 1, 2, and 3. So into the chain stitch is where we need to make our first stitch. If I can get in there. There we are. And then we pull up our purple. Chain 1 and do a single crochet into that same stitch. There we are. And then we make sure that the white is taut, and we do our cluster into the space down in here for our first cluster of the purple. Now, doing the rows in and of themselves really is not that bad. It's just the beginning and the ending can seem a little bit tricky, and I understand that. You know, where do you do a slip stitch? Where do you do a chain 2, a single crochet? You know, I understand, and that's why I'm going through this process with you guys. You know, for me, the fun part is when I'm doing the straightaways, you know, just doing my clusters, because it gives me a bit of an opportunity to chit-chat, you know, which is always fun to relate a little bit of myself to you guys. I like talking to you. All right. There we are. Progressing along very nicely, I think. So, as I was saying, I do love horror movies, but, you know, there are quite a few suspenseful thrillers and so forth that I really do enjoy as well. You know, a couple in particular. There's one that I have seen so many times. It's wonderfully acted. It's called The Collector, and I believe it was shot in the 60s. So we're in the corner, so we do our cluster, chain 2, and then another cluster. And it's about a young man who is, well, he's a little socially dysfunctional, but in his case, he does not put the fun in dysfunctional. He's a collector of butterflies, and, well, he falls in love with this young woman, at least what he believes falls in love with this young woman, and he decides he's going to collect her. So he creates this well-furnished prison in a cellar of a country house, and decides to keep her with the idea that if he keeps her long enough, she'll fall in love with him. Well, it's an interesting notion, but a little delusional, if you ask me. But the acting was really quite good, and there was quite a bit of suspense, and really quite good. It was based on a book, which I have read some of, although never got through the entire work, I'm afraid. But good movie. I believe it was with Terence Stamp, if I'm not mistaken. Alright, so we are almost done with our first row of the purple. Almost there. So going into that space down in here, we do our last cluster. And we finish it off with a chain 1. And then we find our third stitch once more. So that's where we left off, where the white is. 1, 2, and 3. So that's into the chain stitch. There we are. We do our slip stitch. There we are. And then we chain 2. Find the next third. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. We do a single crochet. All right. And then we turn our work. And then we continue on with our clusters, and I'll be right back. All right, so I'm going to finish off this cluster with 2 double crochets into the chain well, the space down in here. There we are. Chain 1 and continue along. Now there's one line in particular from that movie, The Collector, that always gets me. It's the delivery, it's the music, the reaction. So this young woman, she's been kidnapped and she's been put into this not dungeon, prison of sort. And she's, of course, highly upset, naturally. And she's like, people must be looking for me. The whole of London must be looking for me. And, she's trying to reason with him that, he'll be caught, he'll be found out. And he's like, yeah, people are looking for you, but nobody's looking for me. Oh, God. That line gets me all the time because it's so true. He is a nobody. He's a complete unknown. No record, no nothing. He's non-existent as far as the police are concerned. So why would they be looking for him? So, I mean, it's just, it's brilliant. And no, I really didn't give anything away with that. That was not really a spoiler. It's like, It's pretty obvious from the get-go that, yes, she's going to spend the vast majority of the film in this little prison of his. Really, just really, 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 really good. It's very dramatic. And it does not rely upon huge special effects and all sorts of things. No, it's about the atmosphere. It's about the writing. To me, that's the mark of quality, when you can do a lot with a little. All right, so we're at the corner again. Okay. Just pull up some more yarn. One more double to finish my cluster up here. Chain 1 and continue right along. Now, something I noticed is that I made a bit of a mistake. And yes, it does happen. And the mistake, I noticed, it's right over here. See, if you look closely, I have my 3 doubles, and then it immediately goes to 3 doubles. I don't have a chain stitch. But I decided that I was not going to undo it because it would mean undoing all of this work, as well as all of this work, as well as, going into the yellow that I had already previously done. So we're going to work with it. And I wanted to point it out because, yes, I may be experienced, but I'm only human. And so we're going to work on that together. And I'll show you what I'm going to do to try to rectify that. I had one of my Instagram friends who was showing me a piece that she was working on, and it was a knitted piece. Lovely, lovely work, and it was her first try at it, and, all things considered, she was doing beautifully. And she was concerned that because she had missed the increase for a row of this particular piece, what to do. And I said, look, it's okay. That the only person that's really going to know is yourself. Therefore, you can go by the old expression, rule number 1, don't sweat the small stuff. Rule number 2, everything is small stuff. It's okay. Just be aware of it for next time. And that's how we learn, and that's how we grow. All right, so do our last cluster down into here. I mean, of course, it would be lovely if all of our projects were completely perfect. Yes, that would be lovely. But seeing as how they are made by hand, well, each little mistake is like our own personal thumbprint. All right, so going into the third, so that's 1, 2, and 3 with a slip stitch. There we are. And then we go into the third again. So we need to chain 2 first. So that would be 1, 2, and 3. All right. And that was going to be a single crochet. All right, now keeping in mind that I went into the middle of the double crochets right over here. And that's what I'm going to have to do when I reach the other side, going into the middle of the 3. Okay? So keep that in mind. All right, so now I'm going to turn my work and going to start on the next row. All right, so we need to finish up our cluster. Here we are, chain 1. Yes, actually, I believe, now I could be mistaken, do not quote me, but I believe that it is actually a tradition with Amish quilt making, if I am not mistaken, that they deliberately make one mistake when they make quilts so that it is not perfect, and it's a deliberate act. And I personally find that rather special, rather endearing, because it means, to me anyway, I'm not sure about the exact significance, but to me it means that this piece was made by hand, a human, not a machine. And it's sort of like, like I said, a thumbprint saying, yep, there's a little bit of me in this. I think that's pretty special. And in our various ways, we're all special. So that works. All right. So almost to the top with these clusters. It's sort of like with everybody's stitch gauge. Everybody stitches a little bit looser, a little bit tighter. That's why when people ask me, well, what size hook do I use, or what kind of yarn? Well, it varies, from person to person. All right, so we did our cluster in a chain 2, so we do our next cluster into that same space. Yeah, I always say everybody's different, and ultimately, you got to do what feels right for you and what works for you. It's not necessarily a matter of right and wrong. It's just different. There we go. Yeah, I don't believe that stitching should be dogmatic. There we go. And there we go. And we're almost done with this corner, well, this triangle. We just have to finish up this row and then the next one, and then that'll be the end of this segment, at least for now. I fully intend on doing part 3 in its entirety. It's just a matter of finding the time, working on it, and then doing all the fun little editing bits and uploading craziness. Yeah, and I'll keep at it. You know, just I need you please to be patient with me. I am but a humble fiber spider. Still have to go to work, still have to sleep. But I do what I can. Alright, so we're almost at the end here. And I need to pull out some more yarn, of course. Okay. Getting there. Okay. And then the last one here, into that space down below. All right, now, as I stated previously, see on this side, the stitch went into the middle double crochet, so that's what I'm going to have to do on this side, and hopefully it will work. So chaining of 1. Okay, so it would be typically, you know, there would be a space here and then 2 and 3. Well, there isn't, so just going to make do, but we are going to go into the same stitch, so it's the middle stitch right in there with a slip stitch. And one chain is not going to make or break my entire project. It's okay. I will live. All right. So now, because we have reached the end of the road, so to speak, what we're going to do now is we're going to chain up 3. 1, 2, 3, because this is going to be the last row. And so after chaining up of 3, we're going to continue along and do our final row. All right. Okay, so to finish off this first cluster, I'm going to do 2 more double crochets into that bottom space there. There we are. And then do our clusters all the way across. Oh, come on. There we go. I'm sort of debating what color I would like for the final 2 rounds to be when all of these triangles are done. and you do the 2 regular rounds around the whole square, the whole circumference of the square. I'm wondering what I should do next. I'm thinking, perhaps the green or the orange. You guys can vote on it if you like in the comments section below. This can be a group effort. All right. Yep. Come on. Okay. And we're almost to the top again. Always a lovely feeling. Okay, just one more. All right. So we're at the top. We do our first cluster, chaining of 2, then our next cluster. Okay. And then we're going to work our way down the side, and then this triangle will be done. We're in the home stretch, my dears. Well, at least for this triangle anyway. Come on. And with a little bit of luck, I'll be able to upload this before I go to work. Just see how that happens. I try to be prompt with my posting, I do. It's not always easy, but I try. All right, and just a couple more clusters, and then we'll be there. Okay. Okay. Just 2 more. Woo. And our fabulous slip stitch. Okay. So we do our last cluster down in here. All right. And then, dun, 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 we do a chain stitch, and then into our previous triangle, we slip stitch into the top of that first chain there, like so. And we slip stitch, and there we are. And now we have what is going to be a finished edge. And of course, just as we did in part 2, the next, the final, 2 rows that are going to be along this edge here, just like we did with the yellow, are going to go underneath both the purple and the yellow and cinch them all together. And that is going to work out just fine. Oh, this is so lovely. I'm so in love with this. All right, so now I'll just cut my yarn and pull out my loop, and we are good to go. Now, as I said, with those ends, because the white had an odd number of rows, just going to push the white tail to the back of the piece, like so, and this purple tail, same thing, and then we will sew them in, well, I will sew them in along with my other tails off camera. You don't really need to see that. But yeah, so I'm gonna do the next 2 triangles as well. Just be patient, please give me time, and we will continue, definitely. Oh, hope you guys are enjoying this, because I know I am. Well, I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.